Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wilkai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, we're back in the saddle, baby. College football, we kind of had a feeling that it wasn't going to be a great week 3. That's basically what we got. So we'll have some thoughts on what went down. I don't know if it's going to be too insightful about what we provide here. Just is kind of straightforward. But college football week 3 recap, that's the episode we're in. Before we get into our different segments, what do you think? Do you kind of echo my sentiment, or where are you at with college football so far?
Yeah, I think we had the right read on the week. We were wrong on essentially all of the bets that we placed, but the read on the week overall was pretty accurate.
Let's get into I Told You So. I'm going to chuck it to you, sir.
My I Told You So was this week was boring. Sorry, guys. Like when we sat here last week, we were trying to find some of these, big-time matchups so we could preview or even just storylines going into these ones, and it was like, I don't know. And then the week played out almost essentially that. So my cop-out I Told You So is that Nico and the Tennessee Volunteers are legit. And we said kind of before the season that, hey, keep an eye on these guys because they might not make the playoff. They might not win the national championship, but they might set records on offense. And all they did, Brad, I mean, I know who they played, right? Like, does it really count to score 71 points on the Kent State Golden Flashes? I don't know. But they scored 65 of those in the first half. They offered to have a running clock. Kent State said no, so they took their foot off the gas. In the future, just go for 1,000 yards, score 100 points, give us something to talk about. Because outside of this, like the biggest story was what? Portland State getting whooping cough.
We'll talk about it in our upset segment, but there was almost a massive change in landscape. That's for sure. But I Told You So, Tyson. I hate to do this because we ragged on them last week, but Florida State goes to 0-3. I thought this team was going to take a step back, but that's not the situation that I want to talk about. I never bought into the Mike Norvell thing. I just was not necessarily impressed at Memphis. I mean, comparatively with that conference, it's easier to win there than it would be others in that division. You have the most resources. You're in a big area. And when he took over Florida State, it wasn't good in year 1. And I understand there was things that you had to build, and it wasn't a good program before then in terms of recent history after Jimbo Fisher left. But then it improves and everybody starts buying into it. And then last year it was really good with a senior-laden team with a ton of talent and a quarterback who'd been there for 6 years. It was predictable this was going to fall apart. And I just didn't think he was a good enough coach to keep this program as one of the upper echelon teams in the country. There are coaches that have to continue to prove to do that. I mean, people are taking shots at Dabo. The guy won 10 games for 12 years in a row, and he was still taking shots. It's crazy. And this guy does it one time, and everybody's trying to throw out the red carpet for him. I push back on that a little bit. And I think we're seeing it now. The offense that he wants to run, I understand that DJU isn't very good. Tyson, if that's the case, then you got to go to the backups. If he's the one holding you back, you have to make the decision right now to switch him out. If it's not, then we have to have this conversation. Is it the offense? Was it Jordan Travis, who was the only reason why this team has been good the past, decade, let's just say? I mean, there's real questions that have to be answered at Florida State. And I don't think Mike Norvell should be fired. I think that discourse is insane, and it's just the state of college football. But I don't think that he's in the upper echelon. I've been trying to tell you guys that. He's not a Dabo. He's not a Nick Saban who's now retired. Certainly not a Kirby Smart. Certainly not a Ryan Day. We're not the biggest Lincoln Riley guys here, but he's not Lincoln Riley. He's not Steve 𝐟𝐾𝐭. He's a really good football coach. I don't know if he can win national championships with him. I'll just put it that way.
So 4 days ago, Brad would have included Brian Kelly in that ramp, but Brian Kelly didn't cover 6.5, and now all of a sudden he's off of the list. I'm just playing.
No, people just hate my Brian Kelly love, so I wanted to give him a week off from it. All right, Tyson, hand up.
So this is another kind of cop-out here, but this one is legitimate to me because if you heard us a couple years ago talking about one Archibald Manning, the second or third or fifth or whatever he is, Arch Manning, people, he could play. I sat here and I was like, I don't know about the level of competition in high school. I'm watching these highlight tapes and I'm like, I don't think many of these guys are going D1. Like, it's a low level of comp. He plays a tiny school, all this stuff. This dude is a plus athlete against plus athletes. I didn't know that. I didn't think that was going to happen. I am dumb. My hand is up right now because Arch Manning can play for real. And I didn't, anticipate it certainly not this early, especially like with Quinn Ewers still being in the building. I thought maybe we'd see Arch, take a step next year and we could all kind of freak out about it then. I saw somebody say that the biggest threat to Quinn Ewers' Heisman bid this year might be his own teammate, Arch Manning, and it's hyperbole for sure. He looks awesome when he gets in the game, and I know they're not playing anybody, and it's like, oh, UTSA, who cares? This is still like guys that are good enough to play Division I college football, and he's running by them. He's running by them, and his arm looks live, and that was kind of never in question. It was just we were hearing like, oh, this guy's a crazy athlete. And then it was like, okay, he's playing against a bunch of white guys, in the middle of New Orleans. Like, I don't even think that's a church league compared to some of these high school leagues that they have down there. And then he just shows up at the University of Texas and looks like this. I am thoroughly impressed with what I've seen. The flip side, is I might come on here in 2 weeks and lead off with, I told you so, Arch Manning sucks. So don't listen to me. But I think he's as advertised so far.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into that a little bit more, talking about Quinn Ewers here in biggest storyline segment, Tyson. But yeah, I got to put my hand up. I was completely wrong about this Arizona offense. What a hard watch. I mean, we were texting this. It was a Friday standalone game against Kansas State. And those are sometimes a blessing and those are a curse. And this was a curse for Arizona. I mean, my God, they looked methodical. They looked poised. They looked ready for the moment on their first drive when they went 14 plays, 73 yards, marched down the field and scored. They had a balanced passing attack, balanced rushing attack. They looked good. Like, oh, baby, Arizona's ready to compete. Let me read out the next 3 possessions for you. They punt return touchdown. So they're down 14-7. Noah Fifita throws a pick. They punt again. They punt again. They punt again. Turnover on downs. Turnover on downs. Turnover downs. End of game. That is ugly, folks. That is not good. And I know we love Tetairoa McMillan here, and he's an all-world wide receiver. And when you have him, it's hard to not to throw him the football. Outside of Montana Lamonius Craig, who had 6 catches for 75 yards, there wasn't a single wide receiver who caught more than 1 ball. There isn't a single player on this roster, Tyson, that has more than 10 catches in 3 games. This offense is bad. Noah Fifita was awesome last year. I think this offensive line is doing him no favors, but they got to figure out something because this is ugly.
Noah Fifita, at least against Kansas State, and we like him and we want him to get back to being better, but he looked like if Kyler Murray was in Space Jam and they took all his powers. Look, I'm watching him run around and I'm like, this is the dollar store version of what Kyler Murray is. I mean, he can occasionally do some absolutely fantastic things, but look, Jed Fish had a tough week, but he might have been carrying a little bit down here in Arizona more than we knew.
All right, biggest storylines. Let's get into it. And then you talked about putting your hand up on Arch Manning, but let's talk about the situation down in Texas because I do think this is a huge storyline surrounding college football. So what's your take, first of all, on what's going on with Quinn Ewers? I mean, he got hurt, came out of the game. It seemed like he was poised to make a huge, have a huge output against UTSA, 14-16, 185, 2 touchdowns, a pick before he left. And then he gets hurt, and Arch Manning comes in as you laid out. I'll just put the stats. 9 of 12, 223, 4 touchdowns through the air, had 3 rushes for 57 yards or 53 yards. Some of that's taken back for sacks. But he had that touchdown on that long scramble that was 67 yards where, like you said, he was running past people. What's your sense on this situation here?
Well, I think that Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns love Quinn Ewers. I think that is for sure. I think he has every opportunity to remain the starting quarterback of this team when he comes back from injury. And I think that the only way that changes is if Arch Manning continues to look like he did against UTSA as they kind of get into the big boys. Luckily, for Arch in Texas, like that, it doesn't really feel like anybody's even on their level right now. They're going to see for a minute. Texas looks like they might be the best team in the country, and playing quarterback for the best team in the country is not necessarily the hardest thing to do. But this is a very, very weird, maybe sliding doors moment that we might see here in college football. Quinn Ewers is on all the Dr. Pepper commercials. He's NIL king. We knew that from when he took a bag from Ohio State just as a 17-year-old. And it was like, just kidding. I wanted to go to Texas the whole time. And he's looked awesome in his time at Texas. Obviously, goes to the College Football Playoff a year ago, and he doesn't look great in that game. But like the question marks with Quinn Ewers are still the same that he's had essentially since he started took over. I mean, he throws a great deep ball, but he throws a ton of lollipops, and he's got a really live arm, but he doesn't make the best decisions. And he's mobile and he can move, but he's so much smaller than people think. Like he's so much smaller. Like people talk about it, he's 6'5", 240. You know, he's a normal sized guy walking down the street. You wouldn't go, that's the quarterback here. So I think that 𝐿 Ewers is absolutely going to maintain being the starter for a while. But if Arch Manning keeps coming out here and he keeps throwing for 70% completion percentage, and he's averaging 30 yards a toss, and he's running the ball for 15 yards a carry when you exclude sacks, at a certain point, like if you're Texas, you're playing against one team. You are playing against the Georgia Bulldogs, and they look like maybe they were going to fumble this, but you're in the SEC now, and you have to make the decision that is going to put the most stress on these defenses, on the Alabamas, on the Georgias. You know, I can't hardly include anybody else right now from the SEC in that list on the defensive side of the football. Texas has the chance to just say, you know what, we're going to put maximum stress on you, Kirby Smart, and we're going to put maximum stress on you, Kalen DeBoer. And I think that they would win more games doing that, but I don't think they're going to do it.
Wow. So you think Arch Manning is the better option than 𝐿 Ewers right now?
No, at the end of the season. Yeah, I think that'll be made more clear as he gets kind of more PT, but just like the things he can do sideline to sideline, and like now instead of having to defend 100 yards, you know, vertically, you got to go 53.5 horizontally. That's not necessarily something that 𝐿 Ewers brings to the table.
They're not the first person that suggested that. I mean, there are a lot of people who think that this offense could go to the next level with Arch Manning, and we got a taste of it. And the only reason why I push back a little bit is because frickin' Paul Feinbaum gets on First Take and says, we saw that Arch Manning can lead this team to the national championship.
So
like,
dumb.
dude, that was against UTSA. Texas is home. Can you just shut the you-know-what up for 1 second and quit doing hot takes? Like, let's wait a little bit here. Now, first and foremost, 𝐿 Ewers has to be out because I agree with you. If he's healthy, he's going to be the starter.
No doubt.
They have already said, Texas and 𝐸𝐾 that they are going to wait, and Arch Manning knows the deal that he's going to be the starter after this season, or barring an injury. Now, this is an oblique strain. That's what Texas is describing. Day-to-day, questionable for next week. It's against Louisiana Monroe. Does it necessarily benefit Texas to start 𝐿 Ewers? Now, if I'm 𝐿 Ewers, Tyson, I got to say, I don't want to get Wally pipped. I mean, everybody's talking about it. Oh, if he has one bad game. Oh, man, I'd be playing probably. Like, I just throw a couple good passes. I get pulled out of the game. We call it a day. I got to see more from Arch if I want to make that. I mean, again, this is UTSA. It's not the UTSA of you and me 3 years ago when we were loving them. Like, this is a rebuilding team, but it looked good. It looked like he could throw the football, looked like he could run, looked like he'd be explosive in the running game, like you said, something that 𝐿 Ewers doesn't do, and it brings a different element. So this is something to monitor, make no bones about it. Tyson thinks that Arch could give them a higher ceiling. I still go with Ewers right now just because I go with the veteran, just experience, although it was hard to argue with what we saw from Arch Manning. But, man, this will be something to monitor. I think we got to keep an eye down in Austin, that's for sure.
It's so funny because 𝐿 Ewers just beat Michigan, and then no doubter, and then a week later he lost his job.
Heisman favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last big storyline that coming out of this week. How about the Pac-12 getting off the mat? Like, this is something that started. Our texts and our phones are blowing up, not just from you and I texting back and forth, but we got friends texting us like, "Whoa, what's the deal? What do you think?" So, for those who aren't aware, the Pac-12 is basically only a 2-member conference. They're playing independent, playing an independent schedule, playing at Mountain West. They have an agreement that ended after this season, and those teams are Oregon State and Washington State. So what's the situation now? Well, they're starting to poach some Mountain West teams, and this is extremely interesting to me. Tyson, I'm trying to pull up this list, and of course, they just don't roll it for me here. Oh, Air Force, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, San Jose State, UNLV, Utah State, and Wyoming. That's for Mountain West. I'm sorry. Why can't they just?
It's all the state schools. It's just all the ones that end in state are the new Pac-12 schools. I'll pull up the official list.
Yeah, pull up the list for me, please, because I don't know why this just won't lay it out for me properly. But what's coming at? Like, why is this the reason? Like, why is this coming out of the dark right now? Well, the NCAA requires that conferences have at least 8 members. So when the Pac-12 fell to 2, they had a 2-year grace period to get this back up, or else they'd no longer be recognized as a conference by the NCAA. Now, for the Pac-12, they could have waved the white flag. Okay, we understand. We're done. This is sports, baby. This is college sports. They want money. We want people in power and people who want cash from TV rights, from everything else that goes on with this sport. So you knew the Pac-12 wasn't go silently into the night. Instead, what they're going to do, like the Big 12 did, or like the Big 10 did, like the Big 12 did, they're going to poach from other conferences, and they're going to give them the opportunity to play for the Pac-12. Do you have the teams in front of you?
Yes, Boise State, San Diego State, Colorado State, Fresno State.
So those are the 4 teams. So that would get them to 6. Now they need 2 more to get to 8. There's been a bunch of teams thrown out, maybe Memphis, maybe Tulane. UNLV. I don't think Cal and Stanford would come back. Yeah, UNLV to me would be a perfect fit. So I say all this to say we kind of have the rumblings of this getting to 8 teams. It probably is going to happen. Like, what do you think of the new Pac-12? And we'll take it from there.
Well, it's totally going to get to the new 8 teams. I can speak on the 6 that are currently in the conference. I think it's going to be Tulane and Memphis. I think there's a solid drumbeat from here, but that doesn't fit my narrative. So of the 4 teams that they added, Brad, there's a kind of a common theme. All these teams are actually close to the Pacific Northwest. Like, are we going to have a regional conference in college sports again? No, because they're going to add 2 teams from the South. But as of right now, we have a geographical conference that makes sense. That can be financially viable for all teams involved. They don't have to break the bank traveling across the country every week. Cal and Stanford won't come back because they're not going to enter into a conference with such low academic standards as one that would even consider having Tulane in it. I mean, are you kidding me? So I don't think they'll ever come back. They should call Arizona and be like, hey, I know you guys didn't want to leave. This whole thing is too hard for you. Come on home. They won't do that. The more interesting thing to me, Brad, I think, than just the Pac-12 kind of poaching some of these schools, and we said it 100 years ago. Of course, this was going to happen. Like, this is the way of the road. They got all their teams stolen. They're going to do it again, and it's the way college football has always gone. It just feels kind of, everything is more condensed right now. So it's like, what the heck is going on? But the trickle-down aspect of, like, how do you backfill the Mountain West now, and how do you backfill Conference USA and some of these other things, because the NCAA in their infinite wisdom bumped the fee to move up from FCS to FBS from $5,000 to $5 million. And that is before adding, 120 scholarships across all sports, and in some cases adding new sports. So it's going to be a lot harder for some of these FCS schools without massive endowments or without, huge boosters and donors to be able to move up. I mean, North Dakota State made like $2.5 million total revenue a year ago, and they're the best program in the FCS, right? I mean, they did away with the stadium requirements for teams coming into the FBS, but like, there's a lot of little things right now that are kind of looking like, hey, they might just kill the group of 5. We thought they were going to kill the Power 5. Like, they might just kill all G5, G6. We're 100% moving towards a power conference only level of college football, and then a group of 5 or a group of 6 conference, where they get their own playoffs, and then the FCS is going to be somewhere in between what it is now and kind of that D2 level and just on down the board. But this is a dangerous thing for, especially, I think, the highest of the low-level teams in college football, because like Hawaii is just left up there up the creek without a paddle right now, and there's like nobody's taking Hawaii to join their conference, but if we're talking about the Pacific Conference, gotta put Hawaii in.
Yeah, well, they'll stay in the Mountain West. Mountain West will find some teams. They got UNLV, Colorado State, Nevada. All the other ultra ends that nobody wants.
Colorado State's going to be a Pac-12 school now.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Nevada.
It's getting ugly out here, man.
So you kind of mentioned that we talked about it in the text chain that we had with one of our friends who posed this, and it's Nick Simmons. Shout out, I know he listens. He asked if is basically what you said. Is it going to be the Power 5s? And I want to talk about that a little bit because I want to push back on the notion that Pac-12 with these new schools should be a Power 5 conference. I think they should be a G5.
They'll be the best of the after. Best.
Yeah, I think college football should do that. And I know we have differing opinions on that, but it should be the SEC, the Big 10, the ACC, and the Big 12 competing for the championship. That's a college football playoff. You try to get 12 teams in there. Don't play anybody else. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, treat it like the NFL. Like, those teams only play each other. So Penn State plays Arizona, or Penn State plays Oklahoma. Penn State then plays Oklahoma State. Penn State then plays Michigan maybe one year. Oh, Penn State has to go play Iowa. Penn State gets to go down and face Alabama. That's sick. What are people not understanding with that in the NCAA? Could you imagine that? The college football sport is growing immensely. So instead of just the regional thing, now you got Bama versus Penn State. When Penn State faced Auburn, it not only was the biggest thing on CBS for the 2 years back to back because you had the regions. I mean, it was one of the biggest games we've seen outside of Ohio State, Michigan, with all that history. I mean, it was huge. And so to me, that makes sense. And then don't worry about, oh, we'll put Boise State in or Liberty. They have to fight it out so they can fight with the big boys. No, you have your own similar thing with the G5 level. That's the 12 team. We call it the G5 playoff or whatever the heck we want to call it. Whoever wants to sponsor it. Maybe Pepsi gets in there instead of Dr. Pepper. We kind of have its own thing. But then you got the Boise States. Then you got the Memphises. Then you got the Liberties, the New Mexicos. Like, that's sick. I love that. The more football we get, the better. And the more practical, the more it makes sense, the better. And I think that's where we got to get to. Can somebody be in charge of this thing like a commissioner, like Roger Goodell? So all these slap athletic directors and commissioners, we're trying to figure this thing together when they're geriatric.
Dude, I think the reason that those Auburn and Penn State games were super cool is because they were rare. Because it meant something when the team from the South was coming up to play a team from the Big Ten, and it's the whiteout, and it's all this stuff, and then they got to come down to your building the next year. And if that's every year, then that just becomes week 3, and we lose some of that magic that is college football, and we lose a lot of the – look, there hasn't been a ton of upsets to pull from, but we're never getting Northern Illinois over Notre Dame again if this is the way that the college football wants to roll. And the other part is, like, what do you do with those guys? Now they got to join a conference, and so I hate it. And to your point a little bit right now, Texas, SEC school. Georgia, SEC school. Bama, SEC school. Ohio State, Big Ten. Tennessee, SEC. Ole Miss, SEC. Missouri, SEC. Oregon, Big Ten. Miami, ACC. USC, Big Ten. Penn State, Big Ten. Kansas State, Big 12. Utah, Big 10. Oklahoma State, Big 12. Oklahoma, SEC. Probably the top 15 teams in the country right now, folks. And we're struggling, to even find somebody to put. Like, once you get through 8 or 9 this year, then you're, at least right now, you're like, I don't know who to put there. All the teams above them are in the SEC and the Big Ten, and all the teams below them are probably in the SEC, the Big Ten, and maybe the Big 12. So we are at a point where the talent is so consolidated. I thought that the point of a 12-team playoff was for parity. I didn't think that it was to murder what we knew as college football.
Well, we've been doing that for a long time.
It doesn't mean I like it.
I love it. We got to change this sport, man. The NFL is a monster. Why wouldn't you want to model it after the NFL?
Because I like college football. I also like the NFL. I don't want them to be the same thing.
That is fair. Okay, Tyson, let us know what you guys think about the Pac-12. I mean, Tyson and I obviously have different thoughts on it on some levels, but let us know what you think, because I think this is never going to be ending if they keep changing things and keep trying to add. So let us know what you think in the comments or social, whatever the case you want to be. But let's get through this thing, man. Donkey of the day, for me, I got to go Jay Norvell, Colorado State. I'll make it quick on this one. It's just one of those ones, you talk shit, you get hit. And, I've been running their mouth, and, well, we don't think they're very good, and we should have won last year. You put up 3 points at home? You haven't had this game in your home stadium in 40 years, and that's what you put out? That's the product?
And it was this Colorado team.
You're a donkey of the day, bro. Like, that's horrible.
Yeah, they look bad. I mean, there was a point in the game where it was like, no way Colorado's actually this bad. And then turns out we were right. Colorado was not that bad. Colorado State got the boots put to them there in the second half. My donkey of the day is to every executive at every network that puts college football games on. This is beyond ridiculous, folks. We have 4.5 hour long games. The South Carolina LSU game goes for like 4 hours and 40 minutes. There's no overtime. There's a ton of penalties and there was a lot of points, but there wasn't a lot of points at the end. The first half still took 2.5 hours to get through. What are we doing? They're forcing commercials down our throats just to lead into the 2-minute warning to shove us more commercials. The game is faster than ever. We were not stopping the clock after first downs, right? I mean, college football, like every under is hitting because the game speed is moving so fast, and yet we're facing more commercials and games are taking longer than before. Look, it's part of it is it's politics season. I don't need to see these commercials on repeat every goddamn. Like, I just want to sit down on my couch and I want to watch Arizona play Kansas State and I want to be done with it in 3 hours. Why is that impossible?
Gotta save democracy, man. That's what people are saying. That's what I'm getting from all these different commercials. I'm getting pulled one way, I'm getting pulled the other.
I think they both want to kill democracy, is what I'm getting.
Is anybody even like, if you're watching college football, are you like, oh, actually, yeah, that's a good point in these political ads?
No, because nobody's actually saying like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. It's all just like, the other guy sucks. And then I'm like, yeah, he does suck. And then the next commercial is like, that guy sucks. And I'm like, you know what? You got a point.
Just go use the break to get yourself a beer, go to the bathroom, and keep watching all the other games. Upset of the week wasn't a big one. We said maybe it could be Bama. It's one of those ones to go to Wisconsin. No, that was a dominant showing by the Crimson Tide. But what we're going to talk about is Georgia almost getting upset by Kentucky, the same Kentucky team that looked like an FCS level program against South Carolina the week before. I think there's a lot of takeaways here. What did you think of what you saw?
I got nothing for you, buddy. I'm not overreacting to this at all. I think that this Georgia is dead, and they look like trash and all that stuff. They did. They look bad. Like Carson Beck didn't look good. The offense was so slow to get started. It felt like Kentucky probably could have scored 9 or 12 more points, just being frugal with the football and making better decisions, maybe at certain spots of the field. This happens sometimes when you win at the level that Georgia wins at, and you have had this level of sustained success, and it's not, oh, they're getting everybody's best shot, and that's why it happened. They had an off day, and they nearly got knocked for it. That's, to me, that's how good this Georgia football team is, because they're not going to look that bad again the rest of this season. And this was the most gettable version of them that we've seen since, Nick Saban was throwing the sideline a year ago. I think that you'd be right to wonder, hey, what's going on with the running backs here in Georgia? What's going on with some of these pass catchers that we love? But they're 19-year-old kids. It's week 3. This team's going to win the national championship by 40, and we're not going to think about. Remember when Kentucky almost got them?
Well, I will say, if there is a way to beat Georgia, I think we've seen it the past 2 years, and this game was an example of it. They're getting beat in the trenches.
Yeah.
What happened to this defensive line? I mean, well, we have our own bone to pick because 2 of their stars are on the Eagles, and they can't get after the passer and stop a running game. So maybe, I don't know what was going on. But Tyson, remember last year Auburn should have beat Georgia. Mm-hmm. How did they do it? They ran the ball down their throat, and then Peyton Thorne couldn't make just one play. Just not a very good quarterback, got benched. I'm not taking a shot. I kind of did, but just make one throw and you win that game. Couldn't, but they were running the ball. How did Alabama beat them? SEC championship. Consistent running game. Jalen Milroe eventually broke through. Tyson, 45 45 rushing attempts by Kentucky. Now they only averaged 170 on the ground here, but Demi, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong here. Sumo Karnbay, 22 rushes, 98 yards. Jamarian Wilcox, 9 rushes, 43 yards. Now, those numbers would have looked a lot better if Brock Vandegrift didn't go 13 for 26.
Dude, that fumble, that's a game. That was a game. When he fumbled, and it wasn't even to, seal the game. I think it was, second or third quarter. But it was just, you have to be – that's, I guess, more so my point, is you have to dominate them physically, run the football like crazy, and then play perfect outside of that. And it's really hard to have all 3 of those things without being Ohio State, Oregon, whoever else you want to name in the top 10.
I'll say, boy, oh boy, if they're going to be this vulnerable on the ground, I'm kind of worried about them. Now, like you said, they're going to win the championship by 40, and I'm going to look like an idiot, and I'm going to have to clip this.
Or next week, your "I told you so" is going to be "I told you that Georgia sucks," and then I'm going to counteract that with saying I never liked Carson Beck, and that'll be my "I told you so."
So that was an interesting one. Tyson's not overreacting. I'm not really either. I'm just there's some cracks.
We're bored. We want to overreact to something, but nothing happened in this college football week.
So let's get into next week. Playbook preview. And Tyson, if you were not impressed by this slate and you were like, I'm going to get some stuff done on the weekend, and no. You got to sit your ass down on the couch this weekend. We only got 4 games that we're previewing that are the biggest ones. We were like, man, we could add 6 or 7 more that we could talk about, but we don't want to take up too much time, and we want to be thorough on this. So let's start on Friday night. How about number 24 Illinois heading into Omaha to face the number 22 ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers? Tyson, they're both freaking 3-0, baby. I mean, holy smokes. We got my boy Matt Rule welcoming your boy Brett Bielema in what should just be a slugfest. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to see how Dylan Raiola kind of reacts to just the physical level of this game. He looked awesome so far through 3 games this season. He hasn't been punched in the face yet, at least in my view, and that's what this Illinois football team does. Look, Kansas is overrated. Kansas presents so many unique things on offense that Illinois just was like, oh, we have the answer to that, and we have the answer for this. And you're not getting anything going today against us because we saw this already. We got Big Ten athletes over here. I think this Illinois team is really good. I think, in all honesty, the winner of this game should probably move a lot closer to that 15 number where I was saying that we don't know who to place there. This is who wants to keep their playoff hopes alive, because I think both of these teams are very much alive in that discussion. Illinois offense leaves a little bit to be desired. So if you're going to sit here and think, I'm in for a fireworks show and all that, I got the number 1 quarterback recruit in the country, I'm watching Dylan Raiola and Matt Rule on offense, is going to be sweet. It's going to be physical. They're going to run the football both sides. This game might take 4.5 hours, but I think that this is going to be a physical football game, kind of harken back to the 90s almost, and just kind of invoke, when you picture these 2 logos, it's going to be that style of football. And I think that in today's era of college football, like, this is not, let's throw it 50 times and try to outscore you. I just want to control the clock and beat you.
I am excited for this one. That is for sure. I mean, Dylan Mahomes, as people are making fun of him for, but
poor kid can't have a haircut, man.
I mean, he's wearing 15. He's doing the same thing. Come on, these are the same guys who are doing the Kobe fadeaway in their driveway, and they're making fun of this kid. Like, I understand that you do it when you're younger, but this kid's going to be in the NFL, and you're sitting there complaining from your accountant's desk. So maybe,
dude, if I could have grown up and had I didn't care. Like, I could have had a Tim Tebow haircut and worn his number. I would have been juiced to be getting those. This is not an insult to make fun of this guy for being similar to the best quarterback in the NFL.
I know. So, but this will be a test, right? And we talk about the standalone game, and that's when Arizona, and there's some certainly different thoughts about how people are viewing Arizona. But this is at 8:00 on Fox, 8:00 Eastern. Stanford and Syracuse are going before that. That's at 7:30. So it's not necessarily all eyes are only going to be on this. So I think some people will be drawn away. But this is a big, big moment for Matt Rule and Dylan Raiola if they win this thing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll cash our win total here on Nebraska. Nebraska through 4 weeks, maybe. This is the way it feels.
How about this one? USC, Michigan. My goodness, Michigan has to play host. And what we thought was going to be kind of maybe an easy win for Michigan back when this thing started is looking like they may be in big trouble again. Now, we had started to call them or started to set up their funeral on our show last week, and I'm not really seeing too much that would make me come off of that. Alex Orji going to get the start for Michigan, so they're turning things over to him, who we thought was going to be running this thing. But USC's looked good so far on offense, and their defense looks much improved under D'Anton Lynn.
Well, here's the 2 parts on the D'Anton Lynn thing. One, this guy might be a head coach in college football a year from now, so keep your eyes peeled and just watch the way USC plays defense. He seems like he's checking all the boxes of a rising star that's going to get a job somewhere at the end of this year. The other part, Brad, and something that I'm interested in on the USC side of the ball, is LSU's defense just this bad? And is LSU just this soft on offense and not physical to make USC look like the physical imposing bunch that we saw in primetime on week 1? Or is USC's defense for real? And is this offensive line really going to punch somebody in the face? Because Michigan leaves a ton to be desired right now. This is not your national championship team from a year ago. This really isn't any of those Harbaugh teams. But they're still going to play physical, and they're going to make you beat them. And I think that that's going to be very interesting for me. It's funny. I feel like USC and Penn State both lost the bye week this week, even though nothing happened, they're dropping in polls and all this stuff. Michigan should have walked away from that Arkansas State game
with
a 50 or 60 point victory. And so they didn't let them back in the game because it was never in question that they weren't going to win when they're up 28-3 or 6 or whatever it was. But to only win that game by 10 points, I mean, that's something that it would have been awesome to get the taste of, that Texas ass whooping out of your mouth, and you're feeling good now. Alex Orji comes in and all that stuff, but then you're looking around afterwards and you're like, yeah, we won, but scored 28 points on these guys. These guys scored 18 points on us.
Unimpressive, that is for sure. And Tyson, how about this? Khalil Mullings, Donovan Edwards, same amount of carries this year at 36. Mullings 270 yards. Edwards 150. Who's on the cover?
Start the engines. Start the engines. I'm victory lapping, baby.
Holy smokes, that is eye-opening. I agree with you, though. USC's defense. So LSU, and we know their offense and just the running game. It's a little. I think that offensive line's a little bit worse than we thought for
Overrated.
LSU. Holy smokes! But then they go into facing Utah State, who is atrocious. So we have no question. We have no answers about this USC team. Everybody's trying to crown them. 11 in the country. We had a major question mark. So I know people, Miller, Moss, ooh. This is a real secondary for Michigan. I mean, we'll see what happens. I said that same thing about Texas, but I think Texas is still a little bit farther ahead than USC at this point. So I still have some question marks that I need USC to answer. I'll put it that way. This should be a fun game. How about this one? Utah and Oklahoma State, 12 versus 14. Tyson, we just keep getting better and better on this playbook preview. So 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭's supposed to be back. Now that's the word. I don't think he's going to be 100% healthy. We'll see. That's why one of the reasons why I said it last week for this one. But this is a huge matchup. I mean, Oklahoma State has a chance to make a major statement here, potentially even win the Big 12 with this one. What's your read on this?
I think Utah has the chance to do the same thing. I think they have a chance to do the same thing. This game is huge, folks. And look, this is the main difference to me between college football and the NFL is like these games, you know, in week 4 can make or break your entire season. Whereas like you lose in the NFL, the Niners just lost and nobody cares. We're not concerned. Like they're going to be just fine. If Utah goes down here, it's really hard to bounce back. And kind of the same thing for Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State might have a little bit more goodwill with some of the voters based on the way that they've won games so far this year. I mean, we were talking before the show. Ollie Gordon was a complete no-show against Tulsa. They scored 50 points. Bowman's throwing this thing all around the yard. We didn't know that, you know, and they're playing nobody. So it's hard to, you know, really say, is this Oklahoma State passing offense now legitimate? I don't know that. I thought Utah's defense was pretty gross on Saturday. They did not look the way that I expected them to look against the aforementioned Utah State team that you brought up that sucks. And so to watch them hang with them close, and then Utah obviously can pour it on and pull away, but that's what you do when you have better players. This game is deciding the Big 12. I think whoever wins this is winning the conference.
Now, this is interesting to me, Tyson, because I'm looking at these stats, and we talked about it before hopping on in our pre-show, that Ollie Gordon hasn't been impressive. I didn't realize it had been this bad, though. 62 carries for only 216, 4 touchdowns, which, all right, but 3.5 yards per carry. This guy was supposed to be the Heisman candidate. This guy's supposed to win the back-to-back Doak Walker Award.
Looks slow.
Looks slow. We don't like to say this because we're not necessarily in shape, but I mean, you know, we're talking from a football standpoint, looking a little out of shape, right? Looking a little fat. And I mean, it's like noticeable when we're watching this thing. We're like, holy smokes. Like, the guy was cut up last year. And I turned on this year. I was like, whoa. So I don't know if he's doing the Shaq thing and playing his way into shape or what, but holy smokes, Tyson. I was shocked when I turned on that first game of the year. I was like, Ollie Gordon
can jump on this video call and pull both of us through the screen here. So let's be real careful with the way we proceed.
No, I know. Listen, we know he's good. We know he can kick our ass. We're not.
But he looks slow, and
he looks slow.
That's a legitimate thing. And side to side has never been Ollie Gordon's game. Like you're not going to turn on his tape from a year ago and go, wow. Like the quickness factor is off the charts. Like he's quicker side to side than 𝐤𝐿. You know, he's faster moving. You know, once he gets to the secondary than some of these other guys in the country. That's never been it. It's been, hey, we can turn around and give this guy the ball 40 times. And he's going to average 5 yards a carry, and he's going to find his way in the end zone. And maybe, you know, he'll get to that point this season. But that's like a huge thing that's kind of sliding under the radar because they beat South Dakota State week 1. They look fine doing it. And then they, you know, it's pretty gross against Arkansas, but they get there at the end. And then this week, again, you play nobody, and you are able to run up points. Utah will be the biggest test for Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State will be the biggest test for Utah. We're about to find out. One of these teams deserves to be in the top 15, and Brad, I'm not exactly sure who I think it is.
Well, Utah's favored on the road, and Oklahoma State opened as the favorite, and there's been some movement that way. I think it's because Rising's back. Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you.
Eat the onion on Twitter with the Cam Rising thing?
No.
Somebody put out that Rising had cut himself with a needle or like a screw or something, got tetanus, and he's out for like 7 weeks. And Dion was like, "You're a fine, resilient young man. You're going to be like, you're a beacon of hope," all this stuff. First of all, dude, Cam Rising's not a young man. Cam Rising's old enough to do my taxes.
Well, do you see this? The combined age of this, 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 and Alan Bowman, is like 44 or 49 years old. I forget which one. And
49.
then 49, because the Chicago Bears Colts matchup this weekend is going to be 44 combined. It's Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson. I mean, holy smokes. What are we doing here? Last thing, and we'll get into our last game, though. I wonder if, a lot of teams are stacking the box and making Bowman beat him, which he has so far. I wonder if things are going to open up a little bit for Oklahoma State, or if they're just going to live with Bowman throwing the ball over top. That's something I'm curious to see. But, our boy Morgan Scalley could have something dialed up going on the road. But Oklahoma State doesn't lose very often at home.
No, but they never play good teams at home either.
That's a good point. All right, last playbook preview here, marquee matchup. What are we calling this thing? I forget now. We got a bunch going on. Tennessee, Oklahoma. You talked about it in your, when you're taking your victory lap. First of all, you love Nico, and you kind of put me onto him coming into the year. I'm like, yeah, we'll see. You were more onto his tape than I was in high school. I officially now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a man crush on Nico 𝐬𝐽𝐫𝐞. One, he's a good-looking cat. He's a good-looking dude, and he's got perfect hair. And for a bald guy like me, you got to be jealous of that. So I'm into this Tennessee offense. I just got to say, when he's throwing the ball, and we know Josh Heupel just dials it up, it's been great. On the flip side, Oklahoma, Jackson, people were ready to give this guy the Heisman Trophy. People were ready to crown him. There's a lot of questions he has to answer, in my opinion.
Well, Oklahoma tried to throw up on themselves to end the game against Tulane, and Tulane threw up on themselves right back. Oklahoma was able to get a 15-point victory, but that's why, if you're out here watching box scores and going, well, they beat a good team by 15, it didn't feel like 15. And then beating Houston a couple weeks ago by 4, I don't feel like Oklahoma has a ton of momentum right now, which is a problem, because the Tennessee game aside, the remaining part of this, like, they go Tennessee this week, and then it's Auburn, and then it's Texas, and then it's South Carolina, and then it's Ole Miss, and then you get a break with Maine, and then you finish with Missouri, Bama, LSU. Like, for a team it doesn't feel like the vibes are there for a top 15 team right now. That is a brutal stretch. This is one that I feel like they need in order to kind of say, hey, we can play with these guys. And on the flip side, I feel like Tennessee needs this too, because Tennessee has to show themselves and show the country that we can score 50 on anybody. Like, just because it was Kent State doesn't mean that we can't do this to Brent Venables in Oklahoma. I think that just Tennessee can do so many. Look, Venables is a great defensive mind. X's and O's are fantastic. The run fits are great. They're really good. Like, especially if they're playing quarters and they overload one side with like linebackers and then dump into cover 3 kind of in the back end on one side. It's so confusing and it's brilliant. Tennessee doesn't give a shit about any of that stuff. We don't care, because you want us to flood the zone. We'll do that. That's just fine with us. Nico's going to find the spot. He's going to find the guy. It's a different level of speed. Welcome to the SEC. Tennessee is going to win this game by 50 points, bro.
Ooh, there we go. Tyson's hate for Oklahoma combined with his love for Tennessee. I didn't picture him being a Rocky Top, but Venables is really good at defense. And that's the only thing that's making me not kind of proclaim that with you. I think, it's not like they were impressive against Tulane, and I just look at it. But college football, it's getting to the point where it's like it is in the NFL, where it's week to week, right? Where you guys game plan and things are changing, especially with these higher levels. We just talked about it in the biggest storylines of the Pac-12. When we're getting to this point where it's getting closer to professional football, we almost got to treat it like that. I think Oklahoma can come in here, especially at home. It's going to be juiced up, and they're going to have something. And Venables, it's going to be under the lights too. Venables going to have something for the young quarterback that he maybe hasn't seen before. Now, the question is that sustainable over the 60 minutes, especially like you said, when Oklahoma has been recruiting at the Big 12 level, which has been good, and it's allowed them to win a lot of football games. Tennessee's starting to recruit at the SEC level, and we're seeing that. Like, they are just crushing teams. So I'm curious to know if Nico and this offense is going to be able to click on the same level they have, Tyson, because they haven't really been tested. I mean, they got out and just pounced all over NC State, pounced all over Kent State. Not like that was going to be a test. But if it's tight, if it's late, what does this thing look like? So that's why I can't wait for this game. This is my favorite game of the weekend.
I think this is the best game of the weekend as well. And Brad and I are kind of already in on an Ashton Jeanty Heisman future just the two of us, and I don't like clouding my bet slips with too many of them. But Nico's sitting here at plus 900 right now, and if you think that Tennessee's going to win this football game, he's going to be 5 at the end of the weekend. He'll be tied with the leaders. Now that number will move once they play Georgia and Bama and all the other teams that they're probably going to lose to. But as far as like, you know, you want some closing line value on a Heisman Trophy bet, this kid is playing himself right into the front runner conversation. You can still get him somewhere towards the back end of the top 6.
And the last one, Penn State, Kent State. No, I'm just kidding. Penn State off a bye week. Tyson, we're back to the ritual. But you talked about the Heisman bets. We got Genty stuff. Where can they find the rest of our things for college?
Discord app. The group name, as I said, what I said. We got a ton of different channels in there. Right now, you're probably going to profit most by just fading whatever Brad and I put into the chat. Cool. You're going to make tons of money on us. We got whooped this week, folks, and that's why we need you in the app to let us know, hey, quit playing live overs. It doesn't work. It never works. You're never going to get there. That thing said at 99.5, dude. It is 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. We need as much help as we can get. So hop in there and let us know. We've got NFL, college football. It feels weird to say, Brad, but like we're not that far away from the NBA starting back
I know.
up. And it's time, man.
It really is. It's go time. Hockey as well. I mean, baseball. We got to get our good stuff. Baseball playoffs. Come on, baby. So like, subscribe, and share. You know, Tyson are mainly a football show. We do basketball as well, but you know, we want to take you on this journey that is the college football and NFL football season. So if you're listening to this, you found us through college, you know, we do cover the NFL. So that's why you smash that subscribe button so you stay connected with everything we do. And if you smash the like, it does help us out. Gambling later in the week. You know, that's what we got for you guys. NFL, college football picks. Hopefully we can get back on track. If you guys just come and fade, that's fine with us too. But, you know, give us some winners as well, for God's sake. So we'll talk to you guys then. Peace.